Hello, everyone, and welcome to our ECI Live Pressure in the Workplace, Risk Factors and Those at Risk. A couple of housekeeping items to go over before we begin. Please use the question and answer box to submit your questions to the speakers, and you can submit your questions anytime during the presentation. The question and answer will take place at the end of the presentation, and if you don't see a Q&A box on your screen, look down below at the bar, and you should see a blue button that says Q&A. Click on it, and the box will open. If you have other questions or technical issues, please use the chat or help buttons. Sorry, I'm hearing an echo. Questions or technical issues, please use the chat or help buttons also located at the bottom of the screen. Lastly, you can find handouts and other information about the speakers in the resource list and speaker files boxes respectively. With that, please welcome Evan, Vice President of Research and Analytics, who will give a brief overview of ECI's working group. Evan?
Hi, thank you, Alyssa, for the introduction. Do you still have the background noise? Okay. Thank you, Alyssa, for the introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today for the ECI Live. With me today, I have Melissa Frazier, Senior Survey Researcher for the Global Business Ethics Survey at ECI. And also joining Melissa and I are Steve Guyman, Senior Advisor for Ethics and Compliance with Eli Lilly and Company, and Alicia Olmstead, Global Ethics and Compliance Consultant with Dell Technologies. Before we get into the details for this webinar, for those of you who are not familiar with the Ethics and Compliance Initiative, ECI is a best practice community of organizations that are committed to creating and sustaining high quality ethics and compliance programs. We offer events and networking as well as certification opportunities for ethics and compliance professionals. If you're interested in learning more about our work or our membership, please reach out to Tia Berry, tia@ethics.org. The Global Business Ethics Survey is ECI's flagship research project, and it has been conducted in various forms since 1994. It provides a global look at workplace integrity from the perspectives of employees. Each year, ECI conducts the GBES and publishes the findings through various research reports, infographics, and interactive visualizations. To learn more about the GBES, visit ethics.org/GBES. The GBES is generously funded by 13 organizations listed here. And the funding has a huge impact on the research that we can do, the reach of our research, the countries that we can include in our study. And so we are continually looking for funders. So if you're interested in funding this very important research, please contact Nadine Ferzlazo, and her email address is listed here. So for the rest of the presentation, I will pass it over to Melissa, who will share highlights from an upcoming GBES report. And after she is done with those highlights, then we'll have the Q&A portion with Steve and Alicia. So with that, Melissa, I will pass the mic over to you.
Thank you so much, Evan. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our ECI Live that is completely virtual. This is extremely exciting for all of us, and thank you for hanging in there. Just to make sure you all heard, I know there was a little bit of background noise during the housekeeping. So just so you know, there is going to be a Q&A section that all presenters, including our practitioners, will be available for. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to click on that bottom screen. There's a Q&A box and enter your questions there, and we'll be sure to get to those at the end. So on with the pressure. So organizations cannot function effectively if the rules and policies that serve as the guideposts for employees' actions and behaviors are not followed. Over the years, ECI research has demonstrated that the pressure employees may experience to bend the rules is linked with observing misconduct. In brief, increased pressure goes hand in hand with increased misconduct. So, what are the areas of employees' pressure? What factors help reduce pressure? Are certain types of employees at risk? To answer these questions, ECI delved into the GBES, or the Global Business Ethics Survey, data to shed light on misconduct rates across the globe, the areas within an organization that contribute to pressure, and who within the organization is more likely to feel pressure. Also, if you would like to learn some more about past and current GBES reports, as mentioned earlier by Everin, you can visit our website at ethics.org/GBES. Oh, I'm sorry, I completely forgot to change that slide for you. So, a global outlook. The data discussed in today's presentation comes from the 2019 GBES, which is based on 18,000 plus employees from all over the globe, 18 countries to be exact. So you can see down here the regions that are included in the GBES along with the countries. You can also find this in our reports, so you'll see where all the country data comes from. So the workplace brings with it many sources of potential stress. Employees juggle a variety of stressors each day, from looming deadlines and meeting business goals or targets to contending with office politics, safety concerns, technology meltdowns, and the shifting moods of supervisors, colleagues, especially during this time of change in the COVID-19. So you add to that, you also have doubts and fears of failure that individuals can experience in the workplace. I'm going to pull up a poll question for you all to take while I continue forward. So human resources professionals believe the number one reason high achievers leave a company was due to a lack of promotion opportunities. However, research found that the real reason was found to be work-related stress. So I want you to take a minute to fill out this poll. This poll will show you that there's a lot of different reasons that individuals could be feeling pressure at the workplace. So you can just go ahead and click on here throughout on your using your mouse. You can click on it if you're on your iPad. We'll go over the results in just a minute. So according to an article in Corporate Wellness magazine, workers who are stressed and feeling pressure at work are more likely to engage in unhealthy behaviors, such as cigarette smoking, alcohol and drug abuse, and poor dietary patterns. So the 2019 GBES asked employees, do you ever feel pressured by others to compromise your organization's workplace attributes or values? Throughout the rest of this PowerPoint presentation, I'm going to refer to this as pressure to bend the rules. All right, so let's look at this workplace pressure that some of you have been seeing. Let's see how these results turned out. So it looks like a lot of you are feeling pressure to meet your performance goals, keeping your job. I can imagine with COVID-19, especially in this last month, what that's got to feel like, working far more hours. I know a lot of individuals have been feeling pressure to work more since we're working from home and your desk is 2 feet away from you. So we can definitely see that's increasing here as well. You see here the top number. Sorry, these did not jump in order like I thought they would. The number one response here was to always be available. As I said, a lot of times it's expected that since your computer is just a few minutes away that you can jump right on and provide information. So we can see that there's a lot of people feeling that pressure today. Thank you so much for answering that poll. So moving on. Sorry, let me get my notes in order here. All right. So according to the current GBES, again, this was the 2019 GBES, globally, 22% of employees indicated that they have felt pressure to bend the rules. You can see here that we're looking at all the different global regions as outlined earlier in the PowerPoint. So quickly, I want to kind of dive in as we're talking about COVID-19. I want to take a look at the GBES and COVID-19. While the coronavirus COVID-19 is a very different type of organizational change from those measured in the GBES, the impact may be similar. GBES indicated that as organizations experienced increased incidences of change based on 0 to 7 types of change occurring within that year, the rates of observed misconduct also rise. Looking at this graph, you can see that organizations that experience none of the 7 types of change, that's your blue bar, 33% of employees observed misconduct. Whereas employees who observed 4 to 7 types of organizational change, that's your orange bar, 75% of those employees observed misconduct. This means that employees working in organizations with many changes at once observed misconduct more than 2 times as often. Let me emphasize that coronavirus was not in the 2019 questionnaire, but COVID-19 is having similar repercussions in 2020, where organizations have to react quickly and are undergoing many organizational changes at once, such as moving to 100% telework, more flexible working schedules, implementing cost-cutting measures, travel bans, and so much more. It is imperative that during these times of organizational changes, ethics and compliance does not get lost in the shuffle. So, in the 2019 GBES, ECI built upon its existing research by further exploring select areas of workplace misconduct observed by employees. The 2019 GBES asked about 6 specific types of misconduct. So you can see here, abusive behavior. That's behavior that is abusive, intimidating, or creates a hostile work environment. Conflicts of interest, decisions or actions to benefit the employee, friends, or family over the interests of one's organization. Corruption, the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. Discrimination, actions against employees based on race, sex, age, religion, sexual orientation, or similar categories. Sexual harassment, unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, other verbal or physical harassment of a sexual nature, and or offensive remarks about a person's sex, and violations of health and or safety regulations. So with all these specific types of misconduct, what was found out with pressure? ECI examined these 6 different types of observed misconduct globally, and the same pattern emerged. When employees perceived greater pressure, they also indicated they observed more misconduct. So let's look at abusive behavior. This is your first set of bars. When looking at all respondents globally, 25% of employees indicated they observed the specific misconduct of abusive behavior. Whereas of those respondents who felt pressure, globally 52% of employees indicated they observed abusive behavior. So when those employees are feeling pressure, that's increasing the views of indicating that they observed that behavior. So ECI explored items from the GBES to analyze their impact on pressure. ECI grouped items into categories and found that a lack of organizational commitment and a lack of direct supervisor leadership led to employees indicating they felt more pressure. So let's kind of get into the specifics of this. So when employees perceive that leaders are committed to organizational values and ethical leadership, the tone is set for all employees to follow. In contrast, a lack of commitment to organizational values and ethical leadership may be a signal to employees they are not expected to adhere to the values or model of ethical behavior. So ECI examined organization commitment through a series of GBES questions about shared values and ethical leadership. Organization commitment was categorized as weak, moderate, or strong. Employee pressure to bend the rules increased with weak organizational commitment, that's 50%, compared to if you had a strong commitment, which was only 19%. So supervisors play a critical role in determining the strength of the ethics cultures in which employees work. In many organizations, supervisors are the only people in leadership positions that employees interact with on a daily basis. So ECI examined direct supervisor leadership. So we took all of the questions within the GBES that employees responded to about their direct supervisor. We grouped them up and found out that employee pressure to bend the rules increased with weak supervisor leadership. That's 45%, compared with strong, that's 22%. So again, more than double increased. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so who is at risk for feeling pressure to bend the rules at the workplace? My pages are sticking together. Sorry about that. Okay, so the higher the level of management, the more likely the employee will feel pressure to bend the rules. As you can see in this graph, employees who self-identified as being a member of top management are almost 2 times more likely to indicate that they felt pressure to bend the rules than compared to the employees who self-identified as not a member of management. So we just got all of this information about pressure and how much pressure can increase misconduct, and it can, based on your organizational commitment and direct supervisor leadership and what level you are, management versus non-management. So what can we do to reduce pressure? What can employers, organizations do? So one thing you can do past ECI research indicates that building an ethically healthy organization where few employees feel pressure to compromise standards, misconduct is rare, observations of misbehavior are properly reported, and those who report misconduct do not experience retaliation. The prescription for ethics health is straightforward. Commit to ethical leadership by supporting your team in following the organization's ethical standards. Promote shared values by discussing the organization's values when making business decisions, and building an ethics-focused business culture by encouraging a speak-up culture. Invest in building a strong ethics and compliance program. E&C programs are best equipped to handle changes when their strengths are leveraged and their weaknesses are actively being improved. I'm going to make a quick plug for ECI's High Quality Program, or HQP framework. The HQP framework is based on over 100 leading practices and provides an end-to-end solution for building and sustaining your E&C programs. So with all of that, you can imagine pressure is difficult, especially during COVID-19. So let's hear from our practitioners and see how they feel in this situation. Everett, I'm going to turn it over to you. Practitioners, if you could turn your video cameras and make sure that your microphones are off mute.
All right. Thank you, Melissa, for reviewing the findings. And just as a reminder, the GBES report that will contain more detailed results on these findings will be available in July. All of you that have signed up for this ECI Live webinar, you will receive an email with a link to the report once it's ready. So the next portion is going to be talking to our practitioners, Steve and Alicia. And so we have a couple of questions that we're going to ask them today, and then we will open it up to the Q&A from the attendees as well, and we'll have some questions from all of you. So Alicia, I'll ask you the first question to kick it off. So as Melissa mentioned, COVID-19 is obviously having a big impact on organizations and employees and the pressure that they may be feeling and experiencing in the workplace. In the poll that the audience poll that we put up, always being available came up as the number one amount of pressure, followed by meeting performance goals. What specifically have you noticed in your work at Dell Technologies related to the pressure that employees are feeling?
Well, before I answer that, I wanted to say how helpful this study is. And I'm so thankful that the ECI does this survey, because I have always found it to be really helpful. So thank you, first of all, for having that as a resource for us as practitioners to look to. And to answer the question that you specifically asked about COVID and pressure in the workplace, I think Dell Technologies was at an advantage when COVID hit, because we already had a large amount of our workforce who were working from home. So we had infrastructure already in place, and we already had a lot of the workforce already working from home and understanding how to manage their work-life balance in that way. But when you then shift to have everyone everywhere working from home and having to figure out how to do that balance, it did have some impact on some of the people in our workforce. So we did have a lot of questions that were being asked, how do I balance this, and what are the expectations now? So that pressure that you're talking about to always meet performance goals or always be available, I think that was one of the key things that Dell Technologies wanted to address at the very front when this happened. I think the thing that makes the COVID issue so complex is that we never really knew at the outset how long it would be that people would be working from home. When we first started, we thought maybe this would be just something that would be in one part of our company, just in one region. We didn't know if it would last a month or two. And now that it's starting to unfold more clearly, we're seeing that we're needing to make more adjustments for more longer term work from home environments. And we're making big shifts in the way that we do our work across all of our regions. But one of the things that we did at the onset was we made sure that people knew that we understood this was not the normal working environment. And so there was a lot of flexibility given to people to know that, especially those who were working with children in the home, because school was being done also at home, there was going to be a lot of flexibility in the working schedule. Some of our team members flexed their work time to come in the evenings when their children were asleep, or just during certain hours of the day to accommodate. And also some people would put signature tags that would be in their emails, reminding people that during this time that they were only working during certain times, or to expect a delay in response because they were working through a lot of unforeseen challenges in their work environment. So that was one of the things that we really wanted to make sure that people were aware of, so that they didn't start to feel some of these pressures. When we look at our case data, though, and how pressure might be reported, we haven't seen any change in our allegation case data for these kinds of pressures or concerns about misconduct. But what we did find was a large increase of inquiries of how to handle the new working environment, especially in our sales and marketing group, because their day in and day out job is engaging with customers who are also now in a virtual environment. And so we've had to do a lot of work in adapting some of our guidance to meet the virtual environment with customers. And as some of you may have seen some of the community forum posts that I've put out asking for benchmarking about certain customer engagement best practices, I'm sure I'm not the only one that's seen a shift in sales and marketing's requests in figuring out how do they handle their business with the goals that they have in place, but still meeting the requirements of our policies and staying in line with doing business the right way. So I have more, but I want to give Steve a chance to answer too.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. Steve, what are your thoughts?
So it's great. Our experience and my thoughts are very aligned with what Alicia has been able to communicate that Dell has experienced. I work.
Oh, looks like we may have lost Steve. Steve? Okay, well, let's see if Steve can get back on. But in the meantime, Alicia, I will continue to ask you questions. So as a multinational company, has Dell Technologies noticed differences in pressure to bend the rules across the various global regions? Are there, differences across the regions where you see certain reasons for bending the rules rising to the top in one region, whereas those reasons may differ in another region?
So I'm in looking at our data. Oh, great, Steve. Welcome back. Let's go back to Steve.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so much for that significant upgrade I had in my Comcast and having a higher internet speed at my house. But our experience has been much similar to Dell's. The one thing we've noticed is, a global, a multinational health company is the experience of employees has varied by geographies. And what do I mean by that? So we have about 3,000 employees in China. They were significantly impacted. And, for those employees, they literally were homebound and they had to have permission and passes to leave. Then subsequently, our employees in Italy had a very similar experience. And we had people in much smaller residences than we're used to in the United States trying to figure out how to deal with family, with children, with parents in very limited location, and how to just try to find a quiet corner to conduct their work. That created significant pressure for people. And we were fortunate that we had a lot of people speaking up on this early, saying, this is very difficult. I'm really challenged to find a way to deliver on the expectations. And we've been very fortunate that our leadership as a healthcare organization stepped in and said, this is a very unique time. We're going to accommodate, we're going to understand. And so we have accommodated in different ways in different regions around the world. But one of the things that's been the most important in order to go ahead and let people not feel pressure has been senior leadership communication. I have actually seen more communication from senior leaders on the importance of well-being to employees, the importance of really that this is a very unique time. We are going to make accommodations. We need to continue to do our research and development activities that must proceed day to day in a sequential fashion, or we lose months or years of progress. And we need to maintain our manufacturing capabilities in order to go ahead and to assure that the medications that are life-saving and patients' lives depend on, that continues to flow. But for the rest of us, we've made significant accommodations. Those people who have done work in our organization, much as they have in other organizations, who have found ways to continue to go to the office, those people are heroes. There's no question about it. They put themselves, their families in a very unique situation of being exposed. And it's very important that we all have tried to take an approach to, as a community and a company, support the capability and the ability of those individuals to engage and to try to have a very consistent dialogue of those are our most important frontline employees right now. Everything else we need to do is to support them. And we need to be very conscious that we're all feeling pressures being in these confined spaces, not being able to leave home, having difficulties in managing our work, but that's our most important work. So, the two things we've really heard and seen a lot of are communications from our CEO, from executive committee members, from other leaders, and then also significant communication that we have prioritized the work of research and development folks and our manufacturing folks, and all the rest of us should try to go ahead and deliver our work to support them. I know that sounds very general and holistic, but that actually has been very important to employees, and at least having a foundation of where do my roles and contributions fit in the interim. And then as we move to a longer term experience in dealing with COVID-19 and the pandemic and the uncertainty of when we return to work, how do we start to prioritize our work and put it in context? So I hope that helps. It's been a very interesting experience for us. The one other piece that I would put on there is I have to throw a shout out to some of our colleagues. We had limited testing available early on in Indiana. So many of our research and development staff that were in the office, that went to the office, continue to do so. But we had many other physicians, nurses, pharmacists, others who set up testing. And I don't think we're the only biopharma company who did that. So we became one of the reference test sites for the state of Indiana. And we had, up to 1,000 patients a day at times coming through. And so it was really engaging and motivating to be able to get to what's our core, what's our purpose as a company. And it's trying to provide answers that matter and that promise to patients. And so a really difficult, really tragic situation for many has turned into a very inspiring situation for us. And the reason I mention that is that has been one of the ways that we've been able to help employees deal with the pressure is by reminding them what our core mission is, and that, it's manufacturing, it's research, and it's treating patients, and everything else is secondary in the interim. It's important. And we've just been very, very fortunate that our senior leaders have had regular, in many cases weekly, in some cases every few days, communications with a broad employee base reminding them of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad that Steve brought, I just wanted to also add to that because I think that Steve brought up a really good point about the different parts of the company understanding exactly what their role is, and also that the company is reminded about the mission and their purpose and how it fits in to helping alleviate some of the impacts that COVID is bringing on. Similar to what Eli Lilly has experienced, Dell Technologies has also had a lot of communication from the top management, Michael Dell himself coming and giving multiple town hall meetings to talk about the importance of health and safety and family, but also the importance that Dell Technologies plays in helping other companies to meet their goals as a technology company, providing infrastructure help to all of those who now are working from home and never expected to have to switch to that kind of environment. We also found ourselves in a unique opportunity to find that silver lining of helping other companies to stay afloat and keep going in an environment they didn't expect to find themselves in too. Thanks for mentioning that, Steve.
Yeah.
All right. Just as a quick follow-up, I think you alluded to this, Steve, a little bit, as well as you, Alicia, but has there been a change and an adjustment in performance goals for employees due to the COVID environment? Is that one way that your organizations are helping to alleviate pressure that employees may be feeling? Or is everything on track and moving ahead?
I think go ahead.
Sorry about that.
Well, okay. Well, I'll go first. I think that in some cases, there have been adjustments made. People who are working on things that are not essential are being given more flexibility to have a little more time to finish the projects that they're working on. But as Steve mentioned, there are certain things that have to keep moving, and those things are moving forward. But most of those people are in environments that are being contained and protected. But also some of the complexity in that is that it takes a lot of time to sometimes shift those goals because of the nature of our business and not knowing exactly how long the impact was going or still is going to last. So I think that is something we are looking at now, looking at seeing what are the things that can be shifted, how much flexibility can we have to alleviate pressure in the different parts of our workforce. So that's an ongoing discussion that management is having right now.
Yeah, our experience has been very similar. It's dependent upon the role and the prioritization of the role and our ability to be flexible. Manufacturing, that's been very challenging. We must maintain our manufacturing to provide for the patients and the families that we serve. If you're in our tax department, we've had some relief on tax from the federal government and governments around the world, but others we haven't. So you have to make sure you're maintaining some of your work and filing timely reports there. If you're in sales or you're in marketing activities, we have actually been very flexible because the environment's completely changed. Our sales professionals around the world will have to go to healthcare facilities to engage their customers. Well, those healthcare facilities are closed. So how do you do that? We've moved to new methods with virtual technologies, but in many of the cases, the healthcare professionals have appropriately prioritized the treatment of their patients first, and they have very limited time and ability to interact with industry. And that's acceptable. So in those types of cases, we have made significant changes to what the interaction expectations are, and we've shifted what some of our time has been spent to enhancing the training and qualification of those employees, including for ethics compliance matters. So, where sales professionals were unable to go ahead and have interactions during the first few weeks, the first month, really any interactions with healthcare providers, our leadership team for the sales in various geographies pivoted and said, this is a great time to retrain them in how to do things and how to do things right. And we have had some of our ethics compliance teams step up and actually fill the void on that and provide detailed, in-depth ethics compliance training on past matters, but also prepare them for virtual interactions. So, it depends. The metrics change. So in that time period, the metric became, instead of sales for those sales organizations, completion of their enhanced qualifications and training. So I don't think that our story is unique at all as an industry or unique across industries. I think we're seeing a lot of flexibility of leaders to try to set people up for success. And, there are always exceptions to that as well. Leaders will still feel significant pressure to deliver on what the organization's expected earnings and profits are. And so, they try to set this balance. But we've had a pretty positive experience with it thus far. Now the real challenge is how will this play out long term?
Right. That's the big unknown, right? Okay. Well, let's shift gears then to our second question. And this can be kind of parsed out from COVID and our current environment. Or if you have insight based on the current environment as well. But when we talk about pressure in the findings that Melissa showed, she did show that there are variations in pressure across the globe, across different global regions. So as multinational companies, is this something that you have noticed among your workforce, that there are different sets of pressures, the different pressures for employees to bend the rules, so to speak? Steve, would you like to go first?
Sure. The answer to that is yes. The pressures have been very different by different geographies. And, particularly as a multinational, one of the things you'll find is that in many geographies in the emerging markets, the local companies are much more willing to bend the rules and take risks. And then that puts pressure on the sales and objectives or even from a research perspective, the willingness to continue to engage new patients for research and to do whatever it takes to do that. That puts pressure on the multinationals. So, the pressures in the emerging markets have been particularly high on individuals to compromise their goals. To my knowledge, I'm very proud to say that our leaders have been quite strong in holding on to say, we're going to do this the right way. We have to take a long-term view. We can't just take a short-term view. And as a multinational, most of us have adequate resources to be able to adjust and adapt for a long-term perspective. In the U.S. market, it's been very interesting. That's our largest market in the world. And the way that has manifested itself, again, has been very similar. Smaller organizations whose existence is dependent upon short-term success are taking very risky activities. And our employees hear about that and they say, well, should we reconsider? Should we do that? I feel pressure to try to go ahead and engage in these high-risk activities that professionals from small organizations are doing. And again, we really tried to, wherever we know about it, take a very proactive approach to explain why we won't do that, to let the employees know there is no pressure for you to engage in these types of activities, and to be very clear in setting what our mission and our purpose is and the role that people play. Have we made mistakes? Yes, we have. Everyone's made mistakes during this time period. But really trying to go back to the basic foundation of understanding the risks in each specific market, what the requirements are in that specific market, and then helping employees to try to deal with specific pressures by having those escalated to leadership for a discussion has been our approach. And, it's worked relatively well. I'm sure there are things I don't know about that we don't know about where we've had, issues or failures. But again, very proud of our leadership with their attempts to try to work through these pressures, but also very transparent on the pressures are extreme. People are really feeling pressure.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Sounds like, having that open line of communication is critical to understand what employees are feeling and what they're also seeing on the ground. Alicia, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are really similar to Steve's in that in the sense of internal pressures to bend the rules, we're not seeing any difference in regions at all. There is difference in the regions of how certain areas do business, which does become the concern for us. So just like Steve was saying, at Dell, we put a lot of emphasis on communication and making sure that employees and management levels know the expectation that Dell is going to be doing business the right way. We are consistently referring to the global policies that we have for anti-corruption and gifts and conflicts of interest that apply across the board, no matter what region that you're in. And one of the things that we implement to help with this is what we call our ethics committees, which are made up of a group of team members from that area, from that region, who come together, and their purpose is to look at the pressures that region may be facing. And they have an executive sponsor who is someone who is high up in management in that region. And together they listen to the ethics and compliance managers in that area about some of the pressures that we're seeing in our ethics cases or feedback we're receiving, things that they are hearing just chatter from their own colleagues and work base there. And together they work on messaging that might be specific for that region that might need to be pushed out or emphasized a little bit more. We have every year an internal engagement survey called Tell Dell. And in that survey, we ask employees about their pressures and if they feel like they're being asked to do things that compromise our code of conduct or our values. And we have seen across the board a very, very good result in that there is not any uptick in that, especially during COVID, because we even did this year's Tell Dell survey in May, which is just in the middle of all of the COVID working environment crunch. And when people had started to feel the impact of the new norm that they were facing. And still, as a result of those surveys, we saw that the pressures are not changing and that they're rather low. It doesn't mean that people aren't feeling pressure. Sometimes, of course, we're a normal company. We have 160,000 employees. So, of course, there are going to be places where more emphasis needs to be made. But as a whole and in general, across our regions, we're seeing really, really great adherence to our cultural values and an understanding of the expectations to abide by the policies. And I think that goes a long way because of the communication that our leadership is giving. That's a constant drumbeat that's being sounded throughout the globe for our company.
Okay. So we have one more question for the practitioners, and then we're going to move to questions from the audience. I've seen quite a few questions come through. So we'll definitely have some to select from. So for the last question, I wanted to get a sense of what your thoughts were about how you really train and employees, and particularly supervisors, in your various global regions, as Melissa gave an overview of the findings, supervisors definitely have a large impact on the pressure that employees feel. And so what are some specific mechanisms that you have in place to train supervisors across the globe? Alicia, would you like to go first?
Sure. One of the first things that I think managers need to know is what their management levels above them think and feel is important. And I think that Dell is very strong in the messaging that they send to managers of what the expectation is for them. In our code of conduct, we have a specific section that is all about addressing the expectations of management and how we expect them to behave and the kind of example we expect them to be setting for the rest of their team members. But Michael Dell himself is very vocal about the values of the company, and he even has posted on his LinkedIn posts. A couple of years ago, he had a LinkedIn post that he titled "When Your Name Is on the Building," and it was a lot about how values are so important in business and important to him. And he's really proud of Dell being an 8-time world's most ethical company designee, and he takes that very seriously. So he pushes that message down throughout the management levels. All of management levels know the expectation is that not only are the corporate values important to Michael Dell, but he expects them to be important to everyone. So for us, what we do to help them to support that messaging that's coming from the top is that we provide a lot of targeted messages to managers within a manager portal, so that it isn't something that's just coming from ethics and compliance. HR can put things in there too, and other groups that have messaging for managers to help them know not only what the expectation is, but how to deliver on that expectation. They have resources there. From us in particular, we have a lot of discussion scenarios that we put out there with facilitator guides to help the managers understand how the policies apply to them and their team, and how to have those conversations within their own groups so that they can help their people understand what that means. Because that when you have to teach something, then you learn it best yourself. So that was one of the strategies that we wanted to put in place, is help managers to be able to deliver that message too, with the knowledge that they will then understand it better to be able to explain it. But we also have those ethics committees that I mentioned earlier, and they are really critical in helping the regional areas deliver on that expectation, because they are the closest to the issues that are happening within those areas. So if they are seeing specific types of misconduct or allegations or concerns come up, then they can be addressed in a regional level right there, and even to the management. It doesn't have to be an all everything fits for the same person. I just lost my train of thought there, but for specific targeted messages, we have the ability to tailor that through those ethics committees that are in the different regions. So those are just a few of the things that we have in place that help to train management to be what we expect them to do, but also to help their people trickle it down.
And for that managers portal, is that something that is accessible for employees all over the globe? Is it one portal, or is it specific to regions?
It's one portal that is for everyone, so all managers can access it no matter where they are.
Mm-hmm. And can managers ask questions if they would like to the portal, or is it more communication coming to them?
It's more communication that's going to them, but they know the group that has provided it, so they know exactly where they can go back as open communication to get their questions answered.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. That sounds like a great way to reach managers, for sure, especially if you're multinational. Steve, and what about Eli Lilly and Company? What kind of training do you have for managers across the globe?
Yeah, so many of our training aspects and approaches are going to be very similar to Dell. So we have 3 core values: respect for people, integrity, very general integrity, that's expected in everything we do, and excellence. And that goes back to the fact that the Lilly family, who founded our organization, 144 years ago set those values, and that's been something that's actually been sustained and maintained to this day. That shows up in our code of conduct. In our code of conduct, we have specific training for managers. So we have expectations that all employees need to complete, and then we have specific training for managers. That specific training for managers will actually escalate both down and up, so that we'll have specific topics that we'll discuss with even our board members that will go to all levels of management to make sure that they're sharing the key risk areas leadership is aware of, they're watching for, they're listening for, because we've really made a strong focus the last 4 or 5 years of speak up, listen up, follow up. And those are very specific expectations for managers. And so as part of that training in our code of conduct and then subsequent training managers get, we provide tools and examples of what their responsibilities are and what they need to do when they hear of issues, and the importance of leaders and managers to understand those issues and put them in context. Some issues will span across all functions of our organization. They can be relevant to everywhere from research to manufacturing to sales. Others are going to be very specific. And so we will work through case studies that we will make available to the local management. What's similar but different to Dell is we do have ethics compliance committees for each function and each geography. But that committee is where we have an ethics compliance team member who is part of the local leadership team. So from the highest levels of our organization, our chief ethics compliance officer is an officer of the company. And then for various levels going down, we have an ethics compliance professional who sits on the leadership team so that as business strategy and tactics are being discussed, we can proactively identify risk areas and work with leadership to mitigate those, and then provide case examples to help leaders to understand, here's where other organizations have run into similar issues, and here's where others within our organization have run into similar issues, and here are emerging risks we need to think about. And, particularly in the time of COVID-19, it's the emerging risk area that we've been really trying to find ways to emphasize with local leadership, with using case studies and talking through some things. And we dusted off the shelf. Usually once a year, the past several years, we would have a major external ethics compliance case study that we would use for learning. We used the Wells Fargo case study. We used the Volkswagen case study. And, it's been, but for the grace of God, that could have been us type moments for some leaders. But for most leaders, it's just really getting into, these are really important points where we must listen, we must learn, and we must make sure we're escalating issues. So, case studies are made available to leaders, specific training made to leaders, and then making sure that we have availability of our staff to consult with leaders by being members of their local leadership team. So from a training, we try to make it an ongoing process by being an active participant at the table in the geography and ensuring we have the cultural and language skills to be able to engage with the leaders to provide that ongoing support.
Did we lose Everin?
Maybe it's just me.
I can't either.
I'm sorry. I'm on mute. I was saying for the case studies, is there are those all translated to local languages so that employees can access them from wherever they are?
That's a great question. So the answer is no. We have one of the requirements for ethics compliance professionals in our organization, one of the requirements for management in our organization is they are proficient in English. So that will allow them to take that and to translate them into their local language. We're fortunate that we actually have some internal translation tools, so we're not dependent upon external vendors and all of the challenge that comes with confidentiality and privacy with that. So they're able to use those tools in most cases to very quickly and rapidly translate that.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. So your comments have been very insightful, and Thank you for answering how Eli Lilly and Company and Dell Technologies are addressing these different things and aspects of pressure. So now we're going to move to the next step in the process. Melissa, can you move the slides? We're going to, well, did you want to go over this, Melissa? Or those are just
Sure.
like our in-between slides while we get some question and answers. So Melissa, I'll let you go over this, and I'll look at the questions right now.
Yes, sounds great. So everyone, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. Please hang in there. We still have our Q&A portion. Again, our practitioners are available for Q&A. So if you have questions about Eli Lilly and Company, or if you have questions about Dell Technologies, please feel free to put that information into the Q&A box. This is just kind of another plug for ECI. These are the offerings that we have that can be provided and offered to you. You can also check out ethics.org. If you have any specific questions, please reach out to Tia, TIA, at ethics.org, and she'll also help you out and get you through the process. If you have some specific things or you can't find something, she'll be happy to help you out with that. Again, there's the Q&A box. I know we are kind of coming to our end of the time, so we're going to potentially go over time here. Please continue to join us. Again, in case you have to jump off, we would like to thank Steve and Alicia for joining us. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who's joined us. And we're going to move on to our Q&A portion. Again, all practitioners and us here at ECA are available for Q&A. So if you have any specific questions.
All right, thanks, Melissa. So I think this question is something that kind of comes to a lot of people's minds during this time period of a lot of folks working from home. So while in the virtual environment, the question is, how is performance measured to ensure that employees are actually working? Self-discipline at home can be challenging. Are employees taking advantage of this? What are your thoughts on that, Alicia?
That's a really good question. Our management has a set of workshops that have been provided to them that address this particular topic. There's a set of workshops, and they are all targeted at helping managers talk to their team members about work-life balance, about delivering on the expectations even in this environment, and also how they themselves should be evaluating. And I think that this is a really sensitive time for people to be in because of all of the different competing interests of their time. And for some people, especially who have never worked from home, it's a big adjustment to go from working in the office to working from home and to find that balance and to be able to just turn off your computer at 5 o'clock and walk away and not come back. So I think it's all about the communicating what the expectations are, because management of that particular team member needs to be making that very clear, that people are not expected to always be at their computer. Just because they are at home, you can turn it off at the end of the day and walk away. And if you see that an email came on, you do not have to answer it just because it is there. I think it's just helping people learn a new mindset. And that takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of time. Will people take advantage of being at home? I'm sure, yes, there will be people who will take advantage of that. And then if people are aware of it, they are asked to report that. But we do have it clearly in our policies that we are giving out to people, making awareness of that working from home is not the time to work on your second job. Or if you are going to be on vacation, you need to take vacation time. You can't just say you're working and not be working. So we're working on clearly communicating the expectations to the employees who are having to work from home, so that those who are new to this environment will understand what the expectations are. But I had mentioned earlier, a lot of Dell Technologies employees already worked from home before this happened, and so they already were versed in what the expectations of the work from home environment is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I want to ask one more audience question, and Steve, this question is going to be for you. Has retaliation gone up at your companies during this remote work environment? Have whistleblowing numbers gone up? Is that something that you can shed light on?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think it's a question that we'll be very transparent on, that we're struggling with that because people are speaking up on issues, which is what we want. It's exactly what we want. We've continued to have people report potential violations, other issues. But because of the unique work environment, some of the ways that retaliation would generally occur by being excluded from events in the work environment and others, some of those activities aren't occurring. So we are not, to the best of my knowledge, seeing a significant increase or change in retaliation and where we're going. From a whistleblowing perspective, that is always such a delayed notification to us in our industry. That's something where, we will generally find out about specific whistleblowers once the litigation actually moves forward and where we go. And we've not seen any change there. I do think it's something that we all want to be watching, because more important than ever is for us to all follow the speak up, listen up, follow up culture. So when employees have concerns, they can raise them. They can make sure that they understand that managers and leaders are hearing them. And they can make sure that they understand that there is a formal and active process to manage their questions. As workforces reduce in some companies, that always is a risk of, people in actuality or in perception experiencing retaliation and seeing that they are being displaced because of something that they've said or done. So I think that's an area that we're trying to monitor very closely to make sure that if that were to happen, we won't be there. We always have workforce adjustments. We've not had anything significant thus far, nor have we communicated anything is coming at this point. But I think it's just more important than ever for all of us to make sure that our standard processes are working well, because claims of retaliation and claims that lead to whistleblowing, those come well after the fact, versus having a proactive culture that actively listens and responds to individuals. I think that's the most important thing we can all be doing now. And it's difficult because we're working remotely. And it's difficult because there are a lot of interruptions. I'm having my family walk behind me in my office during this session. That wasn't so having confidence and ability to work, it's just the reality we have. But, I would just go back to culture is more important than ever because of this, and really making sure we are listening when people have concerns and finding ways to do that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Steve. That's a great note to end on. So sorry that we went a few minutes over, but I hope that everyone has found the information shared today very informative. We do have quite a few other questions and answers. Questions. So we will see if our practitioners would be willing to answer those through another forum. And if so, then we will share those with you, attendees. The report that talks about pressure in the workplace, as I mentioned earlier, will be available in July. And you all will receive a link to access that report. Our next ECI Live related to the Global Business Ethics Survey will be September 24th. So mark your calendars and sign up. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you, Melissa, Steve, and Alicia as well for sharing this very valuable information. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.